Story 1: The Neighbor Above by Jessica M. from Portland, Oregon.
Sarah thought she'd found the perfect apartment. 3rd floor, corner unit, great price for downtown. What she didn't expect was the neighbor above her, who never seemed to sleep. It started the very first night she moved in. The footsteps began at exactly 2:17 a.m. Heavy, deliberate steps that moved back and forth across what sounded like her entire ceiling. Sarah assumed someone was moving furniture or unpacking late. But the footsteps continued every single night, always starting at 2:17 a.m., always lasting exactly 43 minutes. After a week of sleepless nights, Sarah decided to introduce herself to her upstairs neighbor. She climbed the narrow staircase to the 4th floor and knocked on the door directly above her unit. An elderly woman answered, Mrs. Chen, who spoke broken English but was incredibly sweet. "You live alone?" Sarah asked politely. Mrs. Chen nodded enthusiastically. Yes, very quiet. I sleep early, wake early." This confused Sarah. "Do you ever have visitors late at night? I hear footsteps around 2 a.m. Mrs. Chen's face changed. The friendly smile disappeared, replaced by something Sarah couldn't quite read. Fear? Confusion? "No visitors. I sleep at 9 o'clock. Always sleep at 9. That night, Sarah decided to investigate. At 2:15 a.m., she positioned herself in her hallway, listening carefully. Right on schedule, the footsteps began. But this time, Sarah noticed something odd. The footsteps weren't just above her apartment. They seemed to be moving through the walls, around her unit, sometimes even below her. She grabbed a flashlight and headed upstairs. Mrs. Chen's apartment was completely dark and silent. Sarah pressed her ear to the door. Nothing but the footsteps in her own apartment continued, now seeming to come from multiple directions. Racing back downstairs, Sarah burst into her apartment and froze. The footsteps were louder than ever, but now she could hear something else. Whispers. Dozens of overlapping whispers that seemed to be coming from inside the walls themselves. Sarah grabbed her phone and called Mrs. Chen. Through the thin walls, she could hear the phone ringing upstairs. Mrs. Chen answered, her voice groggy with sleep. "Hello? Mrs. Chen, can you hear the footsteps? They're happening right now." There was a long pause. "What footsteps, dear? It's very quiet up here." But Sarah could hear them. They were getting faster, more frantic, and the whispers were getting louder. She could almost make out words now. Dozens of voices, all talking at once, all saying the same thing. "Get out! Get out! Get out!" Sarah ran to her laptop and started researching the building's history. What she found made her blood run cold. The apartment building had been constructed in 1953 on the site of the old Riverside Psychiatric Hospital. The hospital had been demolished after a fire killed 43 patients who were trapped in the locked ward. The footsteps stopped abruptly at exactly 3 a.m., just as they had every night. But this time, Sarah heard something new. A single, clear voice, different from the whispers. Room 237. Find us. Sarah never found out what was in room 237. She moved out the next morning. But sometimes, in her new apartment across town, she still wakes up at 2:17 a.m. to the sound of footsteps above her, even though she now lives on the top floor.
Story 2: The Perfect Roommate by Maria L. from Phoenix, Arizona.
Marcus needed a roommate desperately. His salary barely covered half the rent on his one-bedroom apartment, and he was already 2 months behind. When David replied to his Craigslist ad within hours, offering to pay 6 months' rent up front, Marcus thought his prayers had been answered. David seemed perfect, clean, quiet, professional. He worked night shifts at a medical facility, so Marcus would barely see him. When they met to sign the lease agreement, David handed over cash, exact change, crisp bills, like he'd been to the bank that morning. I prefer to keep to myself, David had said, his handshake firm but cold. I hope that works for you. It worked perfectly for Marcus. For the first month, it was like having a ghost for a roommate. David's bedroom door stayed closed during the day. His food in the refrigerator was always neatly labeled and never touched Marcus's groceries. The only signs he was there were the occasional sounds of running water late at night and the faint smell of disinfectant that seemed to follow him. But then Marcus started noticing strange things. His shampoo bottles were always in different positions after David's nighttime showers. Food would go missing from his side of the refrigerator. Not David's labeled items, but Marcus's leftovers and snacks. When Marcus mentioned it, David apologized profusely and offered to replace everything. Night shifts mess with your head sometimes, David had said. I probably ate your food without thinking. Sorry about that. Marcus brushed it off. David was paying most of the rent after all. But the incidents continued. Marcus's toothbrush would be wet in the mornings. His clothes would be moved around in his closet. His laptop would be warm, like someone had been using it while he slept. One night, Marcus decided to stay awake and see what was happening. He pretended to go to sleep at his usual time, but kept his bedroom door cracked open. Around 2 a.m., he heard David's bedroom door open. What Marcus saw made his stomach turn. David wasn't going to the bathroom or kitchen. He was standing in Marcus's doorway, perfectly still, just watching him sleep. Marcus forced himself to lie motionless, controlling his breathing, pretending to be asleep. For 20 minutes, David just stood there, watching, listening. Then he slowly entered Marcus's room. Marcus felt the bed shift slightly as David sat down on the edge. He could hear David breathing and smell that antiseptic odor he always carried. David reached out and gently touched Marcus's hair, running his fingers through it like a parent comforting a child. Such a deep sleeper, David whispered, so trusting. Marcus's heart was pounding so hard he was sure David could hear it. But David just sat there for another few minutes, occasionally touching Marcus's arm or shoulder, before finally getting up and leaving the room. The next morning, Marcus acted normal, but he was terrified. He started paying attention to David's schedule more carefully. The medical facility David claimed to work for didn't exist. Marcus had looked it up. David's car had medical equipment in the back, but also strange things. Zip ties, plastic sheets, a cooler that hummed constantly. Marcus decided to search David's room while he was out. What he found made him call the police immediately. David's closet was full of driver's licenses, dozens of them, all different people, but they all looked similar to Marcus. Same height, same build, same dark hair. There were photos too, surveillance photos of all these men going about their daily lives, completely unaware they were being watched. At the bottom of a box, Marcus found a notebook. Page after page of detailed observations about sleeping patterns, daily routines, work schedules. The final entry was about Marcus. Subject shows ideal characteristics: trusting nature, deep sleeper, isolated lifestyle, ready for harvest. Marcus never found out what David meant by harvest. The police arrested David that night, but they never found the other men from the driver's licenses. David never spoke, never explained, never revealed where the others had gone. Marcus moved back in with his parents. He couldn't afford living alone anymore, but that was okay. He never wanted to live with a stranger again. Sometimes, though, when he's falling asleep, he still feels like someone is watching him, and he wonders if David had other partners, other helpers, still out there looking for the perfect roommate. Which story scared you the most? Comment below and subscribe for more terrifying true stories. And remember, sometimes the people we trust to help us are the ones we should fear most.